right in here. So let's go ahead and start with the watches and warnings and advisories that are out right now. And again, as always, if you have questions, save them to the end of the stream. We will do a Q&A session toward the end of the stream. Perfect. Audio is good, so that is good. So I just took myself off the screen there. I'll have to go back and fix that. I did get a new mic, but a while ago. I've been using it for a while now in some of the videos. But yeah, I'm glad it sounds good. So here are the current watches, warnings, and advisories. All of this blue here, that is, those are folks that are under winter storm watches right now. And all of the, I see it's kind of stuttering on the stream there a little bit. Sorry guys, 1 second here. Let me just make sure you can see. All right, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. Just making sure that everyone can see what I'm drawing, because the webcam was stuttering. But here is all this blue area here. Those are winter storm watches, and they've upgraded some of that. The pink areas here, that is a winter storm warning. Shout out to the local NWS here in Norman and surrounding areas. They put up the winter storm watches early yesterday and upgraded to a winter storm warning, giving folks ample time to prepare for this event. I went out shopping yesterday as I just got back here to Norman a couple days ago, and stores were busy. Folks were taking this pretty seriously, so that was good to see. But again, all of these folks in blue winter storm watches, I expect a lot of this to be upgraded to winter storm warnings at some point over the next few days. But for right now, the only winter storm warning we have is the Oklahoma vicinity here. NWS Norman, NWS Tulsa, looks like they've gone with winter storm warnings. But again, I expect a lot of this to change to winter storm warnings from a winter storm watch over the next few days as we get closer to this event for those specific areas. All right, let's talk a little bit about the meteorology here. Again, I don't want to spend a ton of time on the meteorology, as I want to focus a lot on the impacts with this case because this storm is so wide-reaching and so impactful. But let's talk a little bit about the science behind this case. So this is the 500 millibar pattern right now. Big old long wave trough across much of Canada, the northern half to 2/3 of the U.S. But you see this little guy out here right off the California coast. That is a cutoff low that is, as its name suggests, has been cut off from the rest of the jet stream. And it's just kind of sitting out here off the west coast of the U.S. This is going to slowly move eastward over the next couple of days. And out ahead of that, that's going to allow for a lot of moisture in the atmosphere to surge northward into the southern and central part of the country. And that is going to interact with that cold air that's coming down that we'll show you in just a second to allow for winter precipitation. But what this is going to do is this cutoff low is going to phase with a portion of this long wave trough here. So we're going to see in our model data in just a second that we're going to get a little bit of a trough out in here. And as it kind of digs down or digs off to the southwest there, this cutoff low is going to phase with this polar jet stream right here. So we're going to see that happen. As that happens, we're going to see, and this is really what's modulating the different areas that are going to see what type of winter precipitation, snow versus mix versus ice. That is kind of dependent on how fast this phasing happens, as that is going to really modulate the warm advection, the warm moist air that's coming in from the south, and where the cold air sets up. So here at the surface, you can kind of see the start of this cold air plunge already. So this is a pretty stout area of high pressure up here in Canada, dripping into the northern U.S. there. 1,040 millibar contour right at the top of the screen there. So this is a very stout ridge of high pressure at the surface. You see the northerly winds here at the surface, indicating that that cold air is coming down to the south. And that this high pressure is associated with cold air aloft. So that is going to plunge down to the south all the way into the far southern portions of the country. And as that cold air kind of sets up, I'll draw it in blue here. So this cold air is going to set up across the central and southern plains, eastward into the southeast, mid-south, and the eastern seaboard. And so as we get that warm advection to go up and over this cold air, that's called overrunning. We talk about this with warm fronts a lot. That's why we see oftentimes a lot of precipitation just widespread rain on the north side of a warm front is because of a process called overrunning. So as we know, frontal surfaces, I'll actually draw it on the whiteboard here if I can. So frontal surfaces are sloped surfaces. So if we're drawing a warm front here, it might look something like that. And depending on your view of it, but the warm front's not just a boundary at the surface. So if you go up, the cold air is going to go up and over this wedge of, the warmer air goes up and over this wedge of cooler air on the north side of a warm front and overruns that cold air. And when that air is forced upward, you get precipitation. Same thing can happen with a cold front, which is what this is basically. So you have this wedge of cold air here that's really entrenched across the southern and central U.S., really the northern 2/3 of the U.S. Yeah, I know the map website is black. That was on purpose. That's kind of my blank screen so I can draw on. I was just drawing a schematic there for you. So all this cold air up here to the north. So this warm, moist air from the south is going to go up and over this dome of cold air. And as that air is forced upward, that allows for the precipitation to fall. And because the cold air is so widespread, and because we're going to have strong warm advection ahead of this cutoff low that's coming in, that's going to allow for a widespread area of the country to experience this precipitation. Of course, first in the central and southern plains, and then shifting off to the east and northeast, going into the Midwest, Mid-South, Southeast, and eventually into the Eastern Seaboard as we go later on into the weekend. All right, let's kind of show you that in action. This is the 12Z North American model. And so this is at 500 millibars, big old long wave trough across the northern U.S. Here's our cutoff low out here off the west coast of the U.S. That's going to slowly move east. And you see this up here, this little short wave in the flow. That is the portion of this trough that's going to kind of dig down into the Rocky Mountain vicinity, and that is going to eventually phase with this cutoff low. And so you see the cutoff low kind of digs down into Mexico and off to the east. And again, out ahead of this cutoff low, we're going to have a very moist atmosphere that's streaming northward and into the central and southern U.S. So you see that long wave trough digging down to the north, and then eventually we see this kind of become one large trough. That is the phasing of this cutoff low with this trough. And again, how fast that happens, that's what's kind of dictating who gets a little bit of snow, who gets more wintry mix, who gets more ice. And we've seen things kind of waffling in the models the last few days. That has stopped a little bit. We've seen a little bit more agreement in the models over the last couple of days. So that's kind of helped us with what's going on here. So again, that trough moves east, warm air advection out ahead of that trough. But take a look at the temperatures here. So all these blues, pinks, and grays, that is a bunch of cold air up there in Canada and the northern U.S. That is going to very rapidly plunge down into the southern U.S. So those blues there, your freezing line's kind of right in here. And that is going to continue to sag southward into Texas going into tomorrow. This is through the day tomorrow, and then even further surging of that cold air to the south on Saturday. And you see a lot of the country entrenched in these very cold temperatures. Aside from the precipitation with this system, we're going to see very bitter cold with this system as the precipitation ends Sunday into early next week. We're going to see very, very cold air become entrenched across the southern plains and areas east and northeast. So that is going to be another hazard to watch. We think of the precipitation as kind of the main hazards with these systems. But the bitter cold is going to last into next week, and so that's going to be something to watch, and could be a significant hazard as well. Yes, the aircraft recon has been put into the models, so that's kind of what helped things out a little bit last night. I believe the 0Z run last night was the first model suite that got those OBS, and definitely thankful that we have those OBS from the Hurricane Hunters to help us out with this system. So again, that cold air is going to plunge down into the southern U.S. So all your cold air is here, and that warm air is going to go up and over that cold air, and that's going to lead to that widespread precipitation. Now, we're going to see very cold air at the surface in a layer at the surface, But how shallow that layer is and how warm the air is aloft is going to be key in seeing where that line between purely snow and then more of a mix and then ice is going to take place. And we've seen some shifts in that over the last couple of days, and that is going to be a little bit of something to watch here going into the next couple of days. We've seen this, the models start to depict the storm as a little bit farther north, and that is due to more of the phasing of that trough, stronger phasing, a little bit farther north ejection of the trough over the kind of ridge out here in the southeast, and so it ejects a little bit farther north, and that leads to a little bit farther north overall precipitation with this storm. So let's go ahead and take a look here at, that's probably enough of the meteorology here. We'll go into, actually let's show you the precipitation amounts here. So let's start with we'll go with the GFS. So just to give you an idea, some of these models are going to be a little bit different from each other, but this gives you the overall idea of timing, who's going to see what kind of precipitation, etc. So this is the precipitation type and rate, so that you can see here on the bottom, the colors correspond to different types of precipitation. So the greens and oranges, like you see here, that is purely rain. The blues going into the pinks here, that is snow, so the blue colors up there. And the red colors, that is the freezing rain or ice. And you'll see some of that as well. And then sleet is more of this purple color. So that is going to be that frozen precipitation that's not necessarily freezing rain, but it is those sleet pellets that refreeze before they hit the ground. So you see, we go through the day today. This is the latest GFS coming in as we speak. So starting tomorrow morning, this is at 18Z, so right about lunchtime tomorrow, we start to see some rain coming in across parts of Texas, maybe seeping into Oklahoma as well. Precipitation should be fairly light initially, and we may see some snow out here across the southern high plains. And then things start to shift into the winter precipitation. So I'll zoom in here to our southern plains sector. So again, onset of precipitation for the southern plains, Texas and Oklahoma. It looks to be late morning into early afternoon tomorrow. And then you see we start to see that changeover from rain to more of a wintry mix here. So the purple colors, that is your sleet. Whoops. Let's see if I can get that off. So that is your wintry mix right there. Those purple colors. And you see a little bit of ice as well in the reds there. So then we go forward in time, we really see an expansion of that, and then all this blue up here. So this is going to be Friday evening into Saturday morning, overnight Friday into Saturday. All this becomes snow. Oklahoma northward into Kansas and up there. And then this is our line that we're going to be watching. So this is the line between the snow to the north, purely snow in the blues, and the purples here are your mixed precipitation. So this is going to be sleet. I'll rewrite that. So that is going to be more sleet, and this is going to be purely snow up here. And then to the south, we're going to be dealing with some ice. So let me show you what we're dealing with here. So again, this is late night Friday into early Saturday morning. So let me take a sounding here from the snow. So before we do that, let's kind of review the different soundings for different winter precipitations. So on the left here is snow. And you can see that, so the red line is our temperature profile as we go up in the atmosphere, and the blue line is our dew point or moisture profile as we go up in the atmosphere. And we're looking at the freezing line here, so where that 0 degrees Celsius line is. And for snow, the entire profile is sub-freezing. So that precipitation remains frozen all the way down to the ground. For sleet, I'll draw on that 0 degrees Celsius line there, the freezing line. We have a warm nose aloft, so the temperatures go above freezing for a little bit of a layer, and then below that, they're sub-freezing. But there is a deep enough sub-freezing layer near the surface below that warm nose to allow the precipitation to melt as it goes through this above freezing layer, and then refreeze before it hits the ground. That's how we get ice pellets out of that. The most dangerous one here is freezing rain. So I'll draw that in here on the right. There's your freezing line. And you see with freezing rain, we have a much deeper warm nose. So a very deep warm nose and or a shallower sub-freezing layer near the surface. That allows the precipitation to melt as it goes through that layer of above freezing temperatures, but it doesn't have enough time to freeze again before it hits the ground. But the ground is frozen because it's been below zero or below freezing. So the surface is sub-freezing, so that rain sticks on contact and freezes on contact with the ground. So that's kind of the differences between these winter soundings here. So here is our sounding from northern Oklahoma, where we're expecting to see pretty much purely snow. Here is our 0 degrees Celsius line there. Let me draw that in. And you can see the entire profile here is sub-freezing. So that precipitation is not going to have an opportunity to melt. Therefore, initially, much of the northern half of Oklahoma is going to be mostly snow. Then we go down here into the mixed category where we're going to see a bit of sleet. So here is our freezing line right there. And you see it's a very shallow above freezing layer, not a very deep, expansive warm nose there, with a pretty deep sub-freezing layer near the ground. So that precipitation is going to start to melt there in that small above freezing layer, but it's going to have a chance to refreeze before it hits the ground because of that deep sub-freezing air near the ground. That is going to allow for ice pellets at the surface. So that is the difference there. And then as we get into the ice down here in parts of Texas, and that is going to expand northeast as we go through the weekend. Here's your freezing line. You see a much deeper warm nose here with a very shallow sub-freezing layer there at and just above the surface. So it's not going to have an opportunity to refreeze before it hits the ground, but the surface will be sub-freezing. So it's going to freeze on those objects and roads at the ground. So that's going to be dangerous. And again, don't take this with a grain of salt as far as location. We could see some shifts in this as we go forward in time, but we're going to have to wait and see where that sets up. And we could see some shifts as we go into tomorrow, but this is kind of what the NAM has right now. So you see that sleet comes through. Lots going to be ample sleet accumulations here across southern Oklahoma into North Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth area, kind of right on that line between ice and mixed precipitation, including sleet there. But we start to see some heavy icing, central Texas northeastward into the kind of Arklatex region, going into overnight Friday into Saturday morning. And then as we go into the following day, let me zoom back out here. We continue that. We might see a little bit of a lull for the southern plains, Oklahoma into much of Texas, North Texas, as we go through the day on Saturday before things pick up on Sunday with another batch of snow and sleet coming through overnight Saturday into Sunday. But let me zoom out here. Let me switch over to one of the other sectors here. So we'll go to the Ohio Valley sector. So again, this is one model. So again, take this with a grain of salt, but this is what we are. So okay, I apologize here for the chemtrail comments. We're going to try to get rid of those. Yeah, sorry about that. Chemtrails are not a thing, guys. So here we go. The Mid-South sector. So you see most of the precipitation Friday is going to be in the southern plains. And then we shift going overnight Saturday or Friday into Saturday. We start to see that sleet moving into Arkansas, parts of Tennessee, northern Louisiana, northern Mississippi, with snow to its north, northern Arkansas, Missouri, into the Ohio Valley. And then that will continue off to the northeast with time. You see a lot of snow here to the north, mixed precipitation here, and then this band of ice is what perhaps may be the most dangerous thing with this setup. And that is what I think the biggest concern for widespread infrastructure impacts is. You see that ice becoming much more widespread going into Saturday afternoon into evening. This band of red right here focused from Louisiana into Mississippi. And again, this could shift north into southern Arkansas. We'll take a look at another model here just to show you. Northern Mississippi, southern Arkansas as well could be in on that icing, but the ice becomes much more widespread. You see a lot of ice there in the southeast. Mostly rain to the south for the southern half of Mississippi and Alabama, but that ice continues going into Sunday, overnight Saturday into Sunday. And you see another batch as we go into Sunday as well on the southern flank of that sleet line. So this is what I'm most concerned about for this event, is the ice threat across the southeast. Again, northern half of Louisiana, southern Arkansas, northern and central Mississippi, into northern Alabama, central Tennessee, and even northern Georgia as well, from Saturday afternoon through the day on Sunday. That is going to be, has the potential to be pretty crippling. And then let me show you the East Coast as well. So the East Coast states the southern Appalachians could be in for some significant snowfall. And so why that's going to be the case, let me go back to our maps here. So as we go forward in time here, let me pull up the GFS. So this phasing is going to happen, and the mid-level flow increases out ahead of this trough going Saturday into Sunday. You start to see some of those stronger winds approaching the southern Appalachians there. That is going to lead to some pretty significant frontogenesis in the mid-levels here. So I don't believe the NAM or the GFS has frontogenesis here on COD. Let me see here. So you see these bright colors here. This is a product called frontogenesis, and this basically just means a strengthening of the temperature gradient, and that leads to a stronger temperature gradient, leads to stronger upward motion. And so we're going to see a potential for really heavy snowfall rates to focus where this frontogenesis is maximized. So that's going to be the southern Appalachians area, Virginia, eastern Kentucky, kind of that vicinity, going up into the northeast, up into kind of DC, New Jersey area. Very heavy snowfall rates are possible as that frontogenetical response moves off to the east ahead of that mid-level trough and that fronto there. So we could see some very significant snowfall accumulations up here. And that is going to take place mostly Saturday into Sunday. So here you see Saturday afternoon, that snow really starts to come in, sleet to the south across Tennessee and into the Carolinas. And then we go into Sunday, and you see all of this heavy, heavy snow kind of focused right there, eastern Kentucky into West Virginia, into the northeast, prolonged bout of snow there with some sleet to the south. And where this line, the freezing line aloft may start to creep north a little bit, and so we could see some of that sleet start to mix in with some ice as well. And the ice threat is going to be significant also out here across this portion, just to the south of this heavy snow. We're going to have a phenomenon called cold air damming happening. When you have a tall mountain range, and I've got a graphic for you here, when you have a tall mountain range like this, like the Appalachians, you can get this cold air to kind of dam up against it, and it just kind of sits there as a dome of cold air, and it really can't do anything. But once the warm air can rise up and over this dome of cold air, and as it rises, you can get a lot of that precipitation to happen. And of course, we have warm air aloft up here, cold air down here. So when you have sub-freezing air down here dammed up against the mountains, that's going to lead to that melting precipitation aloft, and it freezes right as it hits the surface because this cold air is usually fairly shallow. And so that's going to lead to a significant freezing rain threat for areas just on the east side of the Appalachians as well. So here, eastern Tennessee, Kentucky, you see a lot of ice there across the Carolinas, eastern Tennessee, West Virginia there. So that is going to be a threat as well, where that cold air damming takes place. And then things move out finally on Monday, some lingering snow showers there on Monday before we get rid of this system. And then very cold air comes back in its place. All right, so let's take a look at some of the impacts here. So this is the Winter Storm Severity Index from the Weather Prediction Center. You can see the different categories here on the right in this chart. So we're looking at minor impacts, minor inconveniences to daily life, nothing too impactful. Then we go to moderate impacts. Expect disruptions to daily life, hazardous driving conditions, some closures may be possible. Major impacts, the red color, considerable disruptions to daily life, dangerous or impossible driving conditions, widespread road closures, and infrastructure disruptions, including power outages. And then extreme impacts here. That is the highest level of impacts. Extremely dangerous or impossible travel, widespread closures and power outages, life-saving actions may be needed. So this is the 72-hour, or this is the day 1 through 3 outlook. So through Sunday morning, the impacts for what regions are likely to see what impact. So you can see a broad region here in the orange expecting moderate impacts. So hazardous driving conditions, some closures and disruptions there. within that. But these red areas, so you see this band here from Oklahoma eastward into the Ohio Valley, that's likely due to the heavy snowfall there. Major impacts expected. And then the ice down here across the from central Texas northeastward into the southeast. You see some of those extreme impacts as well. They're across northern Mississippi. And again, that could change, but that is where we're expecting to see the heaviest ice there. From the Arklatex northeastward into northern and central Louisiana, southern Arkansas, northern Mississippi, into southern Tennessee, and then eventually out there toward the Carolinas, northern Georgia as well. Some of those extreme impacts as well. So that is going to be the most impactful thing with this setup is the ice down here, no question. Of course, heavy snow is going to be a problem as well, but the ice could lead to some long-term infrastructure interruptions and including power outages that may last for days or even weeks, depending on some of the ice totals we see. And we'll take a look at some totals here in just a second. This is a little bit of a refined map of what we just saw, and we can see in kind of a 24-hour period who is expected to see the impacts first. So again, your chart here is on the right. The reds here, those are your highest impact areas. So you start to see in the 24-hour period ending Saturday afternoon. So from Friday afternoon to Saturday afternoon, the greatest threat's going to be down here from kind of the Dallas-Fort Worth area northeastward into the Arklatex and southern Arkansas, and then up here from Kansas down into the northern half of Oklahoma, including OKC and Tulsa. Those are expected to be the greatest impacts starting from Friday afternoon to Saturday afternoon. Then those impacts start to shift off to the east. Very heavy impacts here, and this is the chance for at least moderate impacts. So those disruptions to daily life and those some of those closures there. So you kind of see the bifurcation, the ice down here to the south and the heavy snow up here to the north, and then extending into the Eastern Seaboard there. So a lot of folks expecting to see moderate, at least moderate impacts from this. And then we go toward major impacts, and you see we have quite the amount of people who are highlighted in this. So we go Saturday, from Saturday into Sunday, that heavy snow is really prevalent there. Those impacts from heavy snow really prevalent across the southern plains, and then ice down to the south as well. So lots of folks expecting to see very significant impacts with this. All right, let's look at some forecast totals. So these are the latest forecast totals, starting with snowfall for the U.S. This is from the National Weather Service blend of models. So you can see the scale here on the right. So these orange and yellow colors, that's kind of your 6 to 12 inch range there. And you see this is the 72-hour accumulation from this morning to 12Z Sunday. So that's going to be Sunday morning at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. Broad swath of very heavy snowfall in here. 6 to 8 inches within this orange color. Some spots expecting to see locally higher amounts. And then again, that heavy snowfall out there in the southern Appalachian area into the Eastern Seaboard could be the area where we see the highest snowfall as that frontogenesis takes place there. And then let's take a look at some ice accumulations. Again, this is what I'm most concerned about. Looks like some new data is available. So let's go ahead and look at that, see what the latest run shows here. So pretty much the same. Here is the ice accumulation. So this is going to be, so here's what I'm most concerned about is you see the purple colors there. The scale you see here on the right. So those purple colors above 3/4 of an inch of ice accumulation, with those dark purples above 1 inch of ice accumulation. That is going to be extremely crippling. And you see that is maximized across northern Louisiana, kind of East Texas, northern Louisiana, up into the northern half of Mississippi, northwest Alabama, southern Tennessee. At this point, that could change. It could shift a little bit farther north. It could shift a little bit farther south. But again, in this area, above 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, some areas above an inch of ice accumulation from that freezing rain. That is going to lead to extremely crippling impacts there. And also this area out here, northern Georgia, far western North Carolina, northwest South Carolina. Another spot where we could see accumulations through Sunday morning above 3/4 of an inch of ice. And this is, again, not even the full storm. This is just through Sunday morning. We will continue to see these impacts extend into the day on Sunday, going into Monday as the system trails off. So this could be very crippling. You see even back here where the reds are, above 1/4 of an inch of ice, that is likely to lead to some pretty significant disruptions as well. Central Texas in that area as well, where we could see upwards of half an inch of ice out there, the Texas Hill Country vicinity, shifting northeast. But that main ice corridor looks to be from the eastern Texas area northeastward into the mid-south there, with some locally higher amounts as well. We could see, inch and a half possibly in some of these areas where we get the heaviest freezing rain to occur. So very concerning look here across the region for ice. Widespread power outages likely, falling trees, dangerous travel conditions expected. So this looks to be, and going Sunday into Sunday through the day, we might see some ice up here as well in this corridor, beyond what these maps are showing as well. So pretty significant. We'll show you some exceedance probabilities here. So this is the probability, the percent chance for us to see, this is snowfall, so for us to see at least, let's go 6 inches of snow. Your scale there is on the right. The darker blues indicate higher probabilities. And you see there, going through Sunday morning, the highest chances of snowfall above 6 inches exist there in southern Kansas into northern Oklahoma. Those are at about, I would say, 70% or so across that corridor right there. Let's go above 8 inches. Still some pretty high probabilities there across the southern plains in that region. The northern half of Oklahoma, northwest Arkansas, southwest Missouri, southern Kansas. Upwards of 50 to 60% probabilities that we'll see in excess of 8 inches across that area as far as snowfall goes. So pretty high probabilities of extreme snowfall across these areas. And then this region as well, West Virginia, kind of that corridor, some high probabilities of above 8 inches as well in that region. Let's look at ice. So let's go ahead and see, let's go above half an inch. So these are the probabilities of above half an inch of ice. Again, pretty high probabilities there, upwards of 60 to 70+% across this corridor of the southeast. Let's go above an inch. And you see it is maximized there. Southern Arkansas, northern Louisiana, northern Mississippi. 40 to 50+% probabilities that we might see over an inch of ice accumulation in those areas. So pretty high probabilities for ice in these areas. So the website here, if you're looking for this particular portal, I've highlighted it up there at the top of the screen, wpc.ncep.noaa.gov/prob_precip /. So if you want to take a look at these maps for yourself, and we'll get changes through as the model suites come in through the day and the different model runs come in, we'll get changes to that. Some slight changes possible to these amounts, but this is what it's showing right now. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about here? Also, something to point out, if you're looking for an in-depth meteorological discussion, the WPC is your place to go. They have a forecast discussion through Sunday, and they really detail it nicely, the amounts of freezing rain and snow for folks in these different areas. And they have those impact maps as well down here. If you go over to the winter weather tab on their website, that is where your most up-to-date information is going to be. But they have a great forecast discussion as well that goes through all of this stuff. All right, so that pretty much does it here. We can take maybe a look at some other models just to see where things might go and set up. So let's look at the GFS. I'm going to zoom out and we'll show you. Let's go to the national sector here. And let's go to total snow accumulation. So we'll go to a single image and we'll go out to, let's say Monday morning. So here's where the heaviest snow sets up according to the GFS. You kind of in a band from, it's a little bit farther south. So from maybe south central Oklahoma, northeastward into northern Arkansas, up into Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia up there. That's where the heaviest band is on the GFS through Monday morning. Let's take a look at the European model. And you see it's a little bit farther north. So there's still a little bit of model difference here. And we have this main band from the northern half of Oklahoma into kind of the Ohio Valley region, up into the Virginia area, West Virginia area, and up into Pennsylvania and New York. So a little bit farther north than what the GFS was showing. So we have some slight differences still to be worked out among the models. There's the GFS. There's the Euro. So we're kind of honing in on a solution. Euro has just been slightly north so far. And so, but as we go through the day today, that the difference in the models is going to continue to decrease, and confidence is pretty high in a significant winter storm. So so here, as we've been talking, the Little Rock office is upgraded to a winter storm warning. I expect this to happen with a lot of these offices. These winter storm watches will be upgraded to winter storm warnings through the day today and into tomorrow. But nonetheless, a very widespread winter storm is on tap for this system. Again, just to kind of reiterate some of the timing. First, Friday, we're going to see precipitation in the form of mostly light rain across Texas and Oklahoma, shifting into more mixed precipitation and snow going into Friday afternoon and evening. That ice will set up across central Texas northeastward Friday night into Saturday, and we'll see heavy snow to the north of that with some mixed precipitation in the middle, and then things will shift northeast through the weekend as well. So that